You ever look at someone you love and suddenly feel like the room got colder, like the air shifted, and you realize this man who promised to protect you is the same man breaking you down piece by piece with words that hit harder than any punch ever could? If that hits you even a little, stay with me, because what I am about to share might be the moment your life starts changing, for real. This is not just a story. This is a mirror for every woman who keeps telling herself, he did not mean it, he was stressed, he will get better, he promised. But deep down, your heart whispers something you try so hard to ignore. Baby, you are living with an emotionally abusive husband, and you are drowning so slowly that you do not even notice you're underwater. So let me take you into the living room of a marriage that looks perfect from the outside, but inside the walls are cracking. The story begins on a cold evening in a small apartment, lit only by the yellow glow of a cheap floor lamp. She's standing by the window holding a cup of coffee, hands shaking, just barely. He walks in, dropping his jacket on the couch, and without even looking at her, he mutters one line that feels like a punch straight to her chest. "Why do you always look like you're waiting for me to mess up?" And she swallows hard because she knows where this is going. She knows the storm is coming. He steps closer, voice low and sharp, like he's carving his words into her skin. "You make everything harder. You know that?" And she tries to smile, tries to make light of it, tries to shrink herself small enough so he calms down. But that's the trap. The smaller she becomes, the bigger he feels. Here is the first truth I want burned into your mind. Emotional abuse does not start loud. It starts quiet. A sigh, a tone, a look, a tiny comment that seems harmless but slices deep. And before you know it, you start thinking, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem. But girl, let me tell you something real. You are not the problem. You are the target. And that's exactly what this story is about. A woman learning to see the truth she spent years avoiding. A woman learning to fight for herself even when the man she loves becomes the man who hurts her most. If you have ever felt invisible, unheard, or unloved in your own home, keep watching, because what happens next changes everything. You ever feel that moment when your heart knows something bad is about to happen before your mind even catches up? Like the air goes heavy, like the walls lean in closer, like the whole world is whispering, "Run," but your feet stay frozen? Yeah, that is exactly where she is standing right now. And trust me, what happens next is not what you expect. She is still by that window, holding that cup like it is the only solid thing in her life, and he is pacing behind her, slow steps, heavy steps, the kind that make your spine stiff because you know something is coming. He stops right behind her, close enough that she feels his breath on her neck, and he says in that cold, low voice, "I swear you make me feel like the enemy in my own house." Her chest tightens because she knows this line. She knows the script. He always flips the blame, flips the guilt, flips her world upside down. But tonight, something inside her shifts. Not enough to fight back. Not enough to speak. But enough to feel the first spark of anger, the kind that scares her because she has spent years swallowing her hurt, keeping the peace, surviving. He walks into the kitchen, pulling open drawers, slamming them shut again, each sound louder than the last. She flinches every time. Not because he hits her, but because she knows emotional pain leaves deeper scars than any bruise ever could. He turns around and looks at her with eyes that used to feel like home, and now feel like warning signs. "You never appreciate anything I do. You never support me. You never listen." That word "never" hits her harder than all the others. Never, never, never. It is the kind of word that erases every memory, every effort, every sacrifice she ever made. Her throat tightens, her eyes burn, but she does not cry. Not today. Because something in her gut whispers, "Stay alert. Something is different tonight." He starts talking faster, voice rising, not yelling, but sharp, like a blade. Everything wrong in his life suddenly becomes her fault. His stress, his job, his family, his failures, his fears, all of it lands on her shoulders again. She feels her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She feels her nails digging into her palm. She feels herself slipping into that familiar silence she uses to survive. But for the first time, that silence feels dangerous. Here's where the story turns. Because emotional abuse is not always loud, and it's not always violent. Sometimes the most terrifying moments are the quiet ones. The ones where he doesn't scream, the ones where he doesn't hit, the ones where he just talks in that calm, cold voice that makes you question your reality. And that is exactly what he does next. He walks back to her, slow, deliberate steps, and says, "If you ever paid attention, maybe our life would not be falling apart." And her whole world stops. Because deep in her heart, she knows their life is falling apart, but not because of her. She finally finds her voice, small, shaky, but real. "What do you want from me?" He doesn't answer. He just stares. Too long, too intense, like he's deciding something, like he's testing her. This silence is the hook, the moment that changes everything, because she feels it. For the first time, she's not just scared of what he'll say. She's scared of what she might finally say back. And that shift, that tiny spark, that little flicker of fight, is where her whole journey toward freedom begins. You ever feel someone watching you even when their eyes are not on you? Like your skin knows before your brain does? Like something in the room shifts and suddenly you are not safe anymore? That is exactly what hits her right now. And trust me, this moment will stay burned into her memory for the rest of her life. She stands frozen by that window, her fingers still wrapped around the empty cup that stopped being warm a long time ago, and he is standing only a few steps away, staring at her with this strange quiet that feels more dangerous than any shouting ever could. It is the kind of quiet that makes your stomach drop, the kind of quiet that feels like a storm gathering right behind your back. He finally speaks, and his voice is soft, too soft, almost gentle, but underneath it, there is something sharp, something cold, something that makes every hair on her arm stand up. "You never listened to me." Just 6 words, but they hit her like a punch straight to the chest. She tries to answer, but her voice comes out thin, barely there. "I do listen." The words fall apart between them. Weak, fragile, shaking. He tilts his head, just slightly, like he is studying her, like he is trying to read her mind, and her heart starts racing because she has seen this look before. It is the look he gives her right before he twists her words against her, right before he makes her feel like she is losing her grip on reality. He steps closer, just one slow step, and she steps back without even realizing it. He notices. Oh, he notices. And that tiny movement lights something dark in his eyes. "You act like you're afraid of me." He says it almost like a joke, but there's no humor in his voice. She tries to smile, tries to smooth the tension, tries to keep the peace, the way she has done for years. "I am not afraid." But her voice betrays her, trembling around the edges. He steps even closer, and she feels her heartbeat pounding so hard it hurts. "Then stop acting like you are." Her breath catches in her throat, and the room feels smaller, like the walls are pressing in around her. Suddenly, he turns away, walks toward the kitchen again, and she exhales a shaky breath she didn't even know she was holding. He opens a cabinet, grabs a glass, and fills it with water. His movements slow, controlled. Too controlled. That control scares her. Because she knows his most dangerous moments are the ones where he is calm. where he does everything slowly, deliberately, like he is in complete control of the entire room. He drinks the water, sets the glass down, and without looking at her, he says, "You do not understand what you put me through." Her chest tightens, because she's heard this line so many times she could recite it in her sleep. It is always about what she does to him, never about what he does to her. She steps forward just a little, trying to breathe through the fear twisting inside her. "I try, I really do." He laughs softly, that bitter, humorless laugh that makes her stomach twist. Trying is not enough. You ever feel a moment so heavy that even the air feels scared to move, like the whole room is holding its breath, waiting for something to snap, something to break, something to change forever? That is exactly where she is standing right now, and this next moment will become the turning point she never saw coming. She takes that small step back, and something inside her settles, not in fear, not in guilt, but in a strange, quiet strength she has not felt in years. He notices it instantly. His eyes narrow just slightly, like he is watching something slip out of his control, and that loss of control unsettles him in a way he cannot hide. He takes a slow step forward, his voice low, almost careful, the way someone approaches a wild animal they do not trust. "What is wrong with you?" His words are not concerned, they are accusation. But for the first time ever, they do not cut as deep as they used to. She keeps her gaze steady, something she never dared to do before, and that steady look shakes him more than any words could. He repeats himself, louder. "I asked you a question." She takes a breath, her voice soft but steady. "I'm just tired." He stares at her long and unblinking, like he's trying to find the old version of her inside her eyes, the one who would apologize, the one who would shrink, the one who would beg for peace. But she is not there. Not tonight. He steps even closer, tilting his head like he is studying a stranger. "You've got an attitude for someone who's always wrong." That line pushes against her chest, but she does not flinch. Not this time. Instead, she holds her ground. And the stillness of her presence, the lack of fear, the absence of her usual trembling makes the room feel colder. He notices every detail, the way her shoulders are not curled, the way her hands are not shaking, the way her voice did not crack, and it rattles him. He steps back just slightly, pacing a little, not out of anger, but confusion, because control is his oxygen, and right now he feels it slipping through his fingers. He finally asks a question he has never asked before. "What changed?" And she almost laughs, but not out of humor, more out of exhaustion, because everything changed, and nothing changed. She just finally opened her eyes. She speaks slowly, carefully, choosing each word like it carries weight. "I just can't keep living like this." His expression shifts, confusion turning to annoyance, annoyance turning into disbelief. "What do you mean, like this?" She hesitates just for a moment, then she says the truth she has been swallowing for years. "Walking on eggshells, being scared of your reactions, blaming myself for everything you feel and everything you do." His jaw tightens instantly, that defensive snap in his eyes returning like a reflex. He says, "You make me act this way." And there it is, the same line she has heard 1,000 times, the line that used to break her, but this time it doesn't hit the same. It lands differently, softer, weaker, almost desperate. She shakes her head slowly. "No, I don't." He steps toward her again, gripping the edge of the table beside him, and his voice drops low. "Don't push me." She feels the fear rise, but she does not let it take over. "Not tonight." She whispers, "I'm not pushing you, I'm just telling you what's real." That one sentence hits him harder than anything she has ever said, because she has never spoken about reality. She has always let him define it, and now she's taking it back. He turns away, running a hand through his hair, pacing again, trying to regain control, trying to pull the conversation back into his hands. He mutters, "You always twist things, always act like I'm the problem." She watches him, her voice softer than before but clearer than ever. "You hurt me." His body freezes, like those 3 words are something he doesn't know how to process. He turns slowly. "What did you say?" She repeats it louder. "You hurt me." For once, he has no comeback, no blame, no twists, no manipulation. He just stands there, staring at her like he's seeing her for the first time. And she feels it, that shift in the air, that trembling line between who she has been and who she is becoming. She takes another breath, stronger now, and says, "I can't live like this anymore." And his face changes instantly, not with guilt, not with fear, but with anger. And anger he tries to hide, but she sees it in the way his jaw clenches, in the way his shoulders tighten, in the way his eyes darken. He steps forward again, too fast, too close, and whispers, "You better stop this right now, because if you walk down this path, you will regret it." She feels her pulse race, but she does not step back. She does not shrink. She does not apologize. She meets his eyes and says, "Maybe, but staying is killing me." He blinks, stunned, because her boldness, her honesty, her refusal to break, it is something he has never seen from her before, something he never expected. The room falls silent. Not peaceful silence, but thick, heavy, tense silence. The kind that feels electric. The kind that warns you that something is about to happen, something big, something life-changing. He breaks the silence first, his voice quieter but full of warning. "You think you are strong enough to leave me?" She exhales slowly, not bravely, not confidently, but truthfully. "I do not know, but I know I am strong enough to want something different." He folds his arms, leaning back, studying her like she is a puzzle he suddenly cannot solve. He scoffs, "You are not going anywhere." But she feels that spark inside her, that tiny glow turning into something brighter, something steadier. She whispers, "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but this is not my forever anymore." And those words land in the room like thunder. He glares at her, breathing hard like he is trying to pull her back into his grip with his stare alone, but she is not the same woman she was 30 minutes ago. Her voice does not shake. Her hands do not tremble. Her body does not fold. She just stands there, quietly, knowing for the first time that she is allowed to want peace, that she is allowed to want safety, that she is allowed to want herself back. He takes a slow step backward as if he is reassessing her, like he is realizing she is slipping through his fingers whether he likes it or not. And that realization scares him more than losing an argument ever could. He whispers, "You are not leaving me." And she says nothing, but silence is its own answer. This moment, right here, is where something breaks and something forms all at once. The old version of her cracks and the new version begins to breathe for the first time. It is small, fragile, but real. And this tiny moment of clarity, this shift in her energy, this spark of self-worth is what will lead her down a path she never imagined she would walk. She walks away from the window, finally setting the cold, empty cup on the table, her hands steady, her steps slow, but sure. She feels him watching her every move, trying to predict what she will say next, what she will do next. But she does not say anything. She just breathes, for the first time, without fear tightening her lungs. And in that breath, in that stillness, she realizes something powerful, something terrifying, something freeing. The marriage is not what is breaking her. She has been breaking herself trying to hold something together that was never whole to begin with. And when that truth hits her, it hits so hard she feels her knees weaken, but she stands tall because truth has weight, but it also has power. And for the first time ever, she feels that power. You ever stand in a moment so fragile that one wrong breath could shatter everything around you, like the floor is thin glass under your feet, and you know the next word you speak might change your entire life? That is exactly the edge she is standing on right now, and trust me, what happens next pulls her into a storm she never thought she would survive. She takes one slow step toward the hallway, not to leave, not to run, just to create space to breathe. But that single step feels like a rebellion, and he feels it. He feels the shift in her energy, the quiet defiance, the way she is not melting under his voice anymore. and it rattles him. He turns sharply, watching her with eyes that feel like they are pinning her in place. He says, "Where do you think you are going?" And his voice is calm, too calm, the kind of calm that hides a threat. She stops, but she does not turn around. She just says, "I need a minute." His jaw clenches. She hears it in the air, the tension, the disbelief, the insult he takes from her needing space. He mutters under his breath, "Unbelievable." She turns slowly, facing him again, and for the first time ever, she sees something clearly in his eyes. Fear. Not fear of losing her, but fear of losing control, of losing the version of her he could bend, shape, and silence. And that fear twists into anger. He folds his arms, leaning against the doorway, acting like he is relaxed, but she sees the tightness in his neck, the restless shifting of his fingers, the storm building behind his eyes. He says, "You know, this little act you're doing right now is pathetic." She inhales sharply, but she does not fold. She says quietly, "This is not an act." He snorts like he doesn't believe her, like he refuses to believe her, because believing her would mean facing the truth he has spent years denying. He steps away from the doorway, pacing again, the room filled with his footsteps, the tension rising with each one. "You think you're strong now?" he says. "You think you found some voice you never had?" She stands still, letting his words roll off for the first time instead of sinking into her bones. He turns quickly, pointing at her. "You are nothing without me." And those words hit harder than he expected, but not in the way he wants. They do not break her, they expose him. She feels something inside her recoil, not in fear, but in realization. She whispers, "You really believe that, don't you?" He laughs, loud, sharp, bitter, like her question offended him. "Of course I believe it. Look at you. You would fall apart without me." She shakes her head slowly. "No, I already have fallen apart because of you." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Choking. He stares at her, stunned, not because she said something wrong, but because she said something true, something he cannot twist, something he cannot control, something he cannot handle. He steps closer, slowly, eyes burning with disbelief. "You think you can talk to me like that?" She stands her ground, her voice steady. "I am just telling you what is real." He looks at her like he is seeing her for the first time. A stranger where his puppet used to be, and it scares him more than he wants to show. He steps closer until he is just a foot away, and the air between them grows tight. He says, "You better drop this attitude or things are going to get ugly." Her heart pounds, but she does not step back. She says calmly, "Things are already ugly." That one line cracks the room open. Everything shifts. He turns away again, running his hands through his hair, pacing like he is searching for the script he lost. The script where she apologized, the script where she begged, the script where she cried, but that script is gone. She watches him with a strange ache in her chest. Not hatred, not fear, but grief. Grief for the woman she has been, grief for the years she spent drowning, grief for the version of him she loved, the version that never truly existed. She whispers, "I can't keep doing this." And he freezes, mid-step. Turning slowly, "What did you say?" She repeats it louder. "I cannot keep doing this." He walks toward her again, slower this time, almost cautious, like he's approaching something he doesn't understand. He stops just inches away, leaning down slightly until his face is level with hers, his voice low. Dangerous. "Say that again." She does not blink. "I cannot keep doing this." His eyes darken, and for a moment she thinks he might shout, but he doesn't. He lowers his voice even more, whispering something that sends chills up her spine. "You are not going anywhere without me. You hear me? You are mine." Her stomach drops, but her body stays still. Her mind stays clear because she finally sees the truth behind that sentence. It is not love. It is ownership. It is not care. It is control. It is not commitment. It is fear. He needs her to be weak because without her weakness, he has no power. Her voice soft but unbroken, she says, I am not yours. I am my own. And for the first time in her entire marriage, she sees something flicker in his eyes, something unsettled, something afraid. Not afraid of losing her, but afraid of losing the hold he has on her. He grabs the back of the chair next to him, gripping it so tight his knuckles turn white. His voice breaks through the air sharp. You are being dramatic. You always do this. Every time I try to talk, you twist it around. Her breath shakes, but she does not look away. No, you twist it. You always twist it. You turn everything into my fault. He throws his hands up, stepping back, pacing again. Faster now, angrier now, louder now. You make me like this. You make me this person. Her voice cuts through the room, clear and unwavering. No, I do not. You choose to act this way. He stops, freezes, stares, because no one has ever told him that. Not her, not anyone. He steps closer again, eyes wild with disbelief and something else, something like fear. What happened to you? He demands. What changed? You used to be so quiet, so easy. She whispers, I died inside, and I am waking up. His face falls for a moment like he feels the weight of that sentence, but then he shakes it off angrily. Do not try to be dramatic, he says. You are not leaving. You have nowhere to go. She feels her throat tighten, but she pushes through. I will figure it out. Those 4 words, I will figure it out, hit him like a punch to the chest. For the first time he realizes she is not bluffing. She is not angry. She is not emotional. She is done. He steps forward quickly, trying to regain his grip, trying to pull her back into the weakness he understands better than anything. He says, You are going to regret this. Mark my words, you are going to come crawling back. Her eyes soften, but not with fear, with a kind of sad acceptance. She whispers, I hope not, because going back would destroy me. He opens his mouth to respond, but nothing comes out because deep down he knows she is right. He knows he has pushed too far, too long, too hard. And the woman standing in front of him is not the same woman he could manipulate years ago. This moment becomes the silent beginning of her escape, the first real breath of freedom, the first crack of dawn after years of darkness, because now he feels it and she feels it. The dynamic has shifted, and once a shift begins, it cannot be undone. You ever feel that split second when a decision becomes real? Like the whole universe shifts. Like you step out of your old life and straight into a new one without even meaning to? That is exactly the moment she is trapped in right now. Her heart pounding, her hands steady, her mind finally waking up. And what happens next will push her farther than she has ever gone before. She stands in the center of the room, not moving yet, but everything inside her is moving. Everything inside her is alive in a way she has not felt in years, and he feels it. Every inch of it. He feels her slipping away like sand through his fingers, and he panics. Not loud, not wild, but in that quiet, dangerous way he always panics when things do not go his way. He steps toward her slowly, like a shadow creeping across the floor, and says, You need to stop this right now. His voice low, trying to regain that sharp grip he used to have on her. But she does not freeze. She does not fold. She does not apologize. She just breathes. A long, slow, brave breath, the kind she never knew she was allowed to take. He watches her like he is studying her, like she is becoming someone he does not recognize, and that scares him more than anything else. He mutters under his breath, You are losing it. You really are. And he waits for her to react. He waits for her to argue. He waits for her to defend herself. But she does not do any of it. She stands tall, almost too calm for him to handle. Suddenly, he steps closer, pressing the air out of the room with his presence. "You are not leaving," he says again, his voice sharper, heavier, like he is trying to carve the words into her skin. But she shakes her head softly. "I never said I was leaving." Right now. He stares at her, narrowing his eyes, almost as if trying to read her thoughts. Then he asks, slowly, "Then what are you saying?" She hesitates. Not because she is unsure, but because saying it out loud makes it real. She whispers, "I need to think." And those 4 words hit him harder than any argument, because thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to clarity. Clarity leads to decisions, and decisions lead to freedom. He steps back, 1 step, then another, like her words pushed him without her touching him. He looks at her with a mix of shock and disbelief, almost as if she betrayed an unspoken contract he built inside his mind. He paces again, trying to pull back everything he is losing, trying to pull her back into the version of herself he knows how to control. He says, "You do not need to think. You need to listen. You need to stop making up problems that are not there." She feels that familiar sting in her chest, the old reflex to shrink, the old instinct to accept his version of reality, but she fights it. She breathes through it. She lets the truth rise instead. Her voice, soft but strong, she says, "This is not something I made up. This is something I have lived for years." He stops walking and turns slowly, his expression cold, distant, almost calculating. "What are you trying to say?" he asks. But she knows he already knows. She whispers, "I am not happy." That line lands between them like a falling building, heavy, loud, crushing. For a moment, he does not speak. He just looks at her, like her words slapped him across the face, and he can't decide whether to be offended or confused. Then he says something that cuts like a blade. "So what? You think I am happy either?" She blinks, shocked, because it is the first honest thing he has said in a long time. But he twists it immediately, pointing at her like she is the root of everything. "I am miserable because of you, because you are too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, too hard to love." Her stomach turns. The familiar ache, the old guilt, the instinct to blame herself. But then something inside her breaks. Not in a painful way, but in a freeing way. She answers quietly, "Or maybe you are miserable because you refuse to change." He laughs loud, sharp, bitter, like her words offended him deeply. He says, "Oh, please, you think you are perfect? You think you are easy to love?" Her voice cracks, but she stands firm. "I never said I was perfect. I just said I can't keep living like this." He steps closer again, his voice dropping into that low, frightening tone he uses when he wants to make sure she feels small. He says, "You will never find someone who puts up with you like I do. Never." She feels her breath catch, but she pushes through. She whispers, "I don't want someone to put up with me. I want someone who loves me, respects me, sees me." For a moment, just a moment, he looks stunned, like the truth hit him right in the chest. But then the anger returns, the fear returns, the need to control returns. He steps forward, pressing her backward until her back touches the wall. She does not fear him. She fears the history, the patterns, the memories, but not him. Not anymore. He leans in close, his voice barely above a whisper. "You are not going anywhere. You understand me? You are not leaving this marriage. You are not walking out on me." She closes her eyes for a moment, steadying herself, letting the fear move through her instead of stopping her. And when she opens her eyes again, something new burns inside them. a quiet strength, a rising fire she never knew she had. She says, I am not leaving tonight. I am not running away. But I am done pretending this is normal. I am done pretending this is love. I am done pretending I am the problem. He stares at her long and hard, breathing heavier now, trying to intimidate her, trying to scare her, trying to regain the upper hand. But none of it works because the moment she chose herself, the moment she chose truth, the moment she chose clarity, the power shifted. And he feels that shift like a slap, like a threat, like a loss he does not know how to process. He steps back finally, looking completely thrown off balance. He mutters, fine, do whatever you want, think all you want, but you will crawl back just like always. She shakes her head. Not this time, not anymore. He laughs again, bitter and sharp. You will see, you need me. You always have and always will. She looks at him with sadness, not fear, not anger. Sadness, because he still does not see the truth. She whispers softly into the silent room, I needed peace more than I ever needed you. He freezes. For the first time, truly speechless. She walks past him slowly, not rushing, not hiding, not trembling. She walks with a quiet resolve, heading toward the bedroom, the hallway, the space she has avoided for hours. She sits on the edge of the bed, letting her body soften, letting her lungs breathe, letting her heart speak. This is the first night, in years, where her heart and her mind finally agree. She needs something different. She deserves something different. She is becoming someone different. And that terrifies him, but it frees her. She grabs her phone, not to call someone, not to run, but to look for answers, to find clarity, to search for help she never allowed herself to seek before. She searches for signs of emotional abuse, and each sentence she reads feels like a mirror. Each example feels like a memory. Each story feels like her life written by someone else. She feels her chest tighten, her stomach twist, her voice break inside. But she also feels something else. Recognition, validation, truth. And truth, once seen, can never be unseen. She closes her eyes, whispering into the silent room, I am not crazy. I am not dramatic. I am not the problem. And those words become the first piece of healing, the smallest seed of freedom, the spark that will grow into the courage she needs to leave one day. Not today, not tonight, but someday. And the day she leaves will not be the day she stops loving him. It will be the day she starts loving herself. You ever sit in the middle of a quiet room and suddenly feel like something is about to crack open inside you? Like your own mind is whispering, girl, it is time. And you know exactly what it means, even if you were scared to admit it. That is where she was sitting, on the edge of the bed, hands pressed between her knees, heart thumping like it was trying to warn her that everything in her life was about to change, one way or another, because the truth she had been running from was now standing right in front of her, and it was not leaving until she finally looked it in the eye. The night after she found that message, she could not sleep. She kept replaying every moment, every lie, every time he told her she was dramatic, that she had trust issues, that she was lucky he even stayed with her. She heard those words over and over until they were echoing in her bones. But this time, something felt different. Something felt off. Something felt like her soul was done being quiet, done being small, done being scared. And that shift changed everything, because once a woman hits that point, there is no turning back. She woke up the next morning with this strange calm, like the storm inside her had finally settled, not because things got better, but because she stopped pretending they ever would. She walked into the kitchen where he was sitting, eating breakfast like nothing had happened, like he wasn't hiding anything, like he still had control, and the second he looked at her, she saw it. that flash in his eyes, that little flicker of panic that said he knew she knew, but he did not know what she was going to do next, and that scared him more than anything. He tried to act normal. "Hey, you all right? You look tired." But she did not answer. She just stared at him long enough for him to shift in his seat, long enough for him to feel the weight he had never felt before. Because for the first time, she was not shrinking. She was not apologizing. She was not breaking herself down to keep the peace. She was just standing there, holding her ground. And that was more powerful than any scream could ever be. He stood up, trying to regain control, touching her arm, but she stepped back. And when she moved, he froze because she had never done that before. And the moment she pulled away, he knew something slipped out of his hands, something he thought he owned. She spoke softly, yet strong. "I saw the message." In the way his face changed said it all. There was no shock, no confusion, just guilt, twisted into anger, because that is how men like him operate. When they are caught, they do not apologize, they attack. He raised his voice, pretending she misunderstood, pretending it was nothing, pretending she was being dramatic again. But she did not move. She did not argue. She just listened to him spiral. And the more he talked, the more she realized how little he respected her, how little he valued her, how little he ever planned to change. He slammed his hand on the counter, voice shaking with anger, saying, "Do not start this. You always twist things." And that was the moment she truly woke up, because she felt nothing. Not fear, not guilt, not sadness, just clarity. The kind that feels like a door opening inside you, leading to a place you have never allowed yourself to imagine. She walked past him without another word and went straight to the bedroom. She locked the door, not to hide, but to think, to breathe, to decide. And this is where things get heavy, because when a woman closes a door like that, it is not about running. It is about choosing. Choosing herself, choosing her future, choosing something better than the pain she has been carrying for years. She sat on the floor, leaned her head against the dresser, and took the deepest breath she had taken in months. And in that moment, she remembered the girl she used to be, the one who laughed without checking if someone was watching, the one who dressed the way she wanted, the one who spoke her mind without being afraid of the reaction, the one who believed she deserved love that felt like home, not war. And she started crying. Not because she was sad, but because she finally realized how long she had been gone and how badly she wanted her back. That realization hit her harder than any of his words ever did, because it was the truth. She could not unhear. Once you realize you deserve better, every lie, every insult, every manipulation loses its power. Once you see the truth, you cannot go back to blindness. And once you understand your worth, the person hurting you becomes very, very small. She picked up her phone, hands shaking, but steady enough to do what she had been too scared to do for years. She called her sister, not to tell her everything, not to explain, because she did not have the strength for that. She said one sentence, "I need help." And her sister responded without hesitation, "I'm on my way." That is when everything started changing. The moment she reached out, the moment she allowed someone into her world, the moment she stopped pretending everything was fine, a new path opened for her. A dangerous one, yes. Unpredictable, yes. But a path toward freedom. And you know what that means. The power in the story just shifted. The tension just rose. And the man who controlled everything is about to realize the one thing he feared most is happening. She is waking up. And once a woman wakes up, you cannot put her back to sleep. You ever feel that moment right before something big happens? When the air gets heavy, when your chest gets tight, when you just know life is about to turn a corner, whether you are ready or not? That is exactly what she felt sitting on the edge of her bed, waiting for the knock on the door, waiting for the only person she trusted to walk in and see the mess she had been hiding for years. Because once you let someone witness your pain, it becomes real. And once it becomes real, you cannot pretend anymore. She heard the car pull up outside, heard footsteps on the stairs, and her heart started pounding because this was it, the moment she could never take back, the moment that would set everything in motion. Her sister knocked softly, calling her name, and she opened the door slowly, like she was afraid the whole world was standing on the other side. But it was just her sister, with eyes full of worry and a face that had seen her break before, but never like this. The second her sister stepped inside, she froze, because she could feel it. She could sense the tension, the energy, the fear trapped in the walls like it was alive. She looked at her carefully, scanning her face, her posture, the way her hands trembled, and she whispered, "What did he do?" And instead of answering, she just leaned into her sister and let herself fall apart for a moment. Her sister wrapped her arms around her, holding her tight, like she was trying to pull her back together, and that was the first time she felt safe in a very, very long time. But safety has a way of waking things that have been silent for too long. And with that safety came anger, deep, buried anger. Her sister pulled back, looking straight into her eyes. "Tell me everything." And she took a breath, steady, shaky, but real. "He's been hurting me, not with his hands, with his words, with the way he makes me feel like I'm nothing." And when she said it out loud, it felt like ripping open a wound that had been stitched shut with lies. It was the raw, terrible truth, and it was finally out there in the open like a shark's fin. Her sister's jaw tightened. She grabbed her hand and said clearly, "We are leaving today." But before she could respond, the front door slammed downstairs, and both of them went still like prey sensing the predator coming in the house. He was home early. Each step he took toward the bedroom felt like thunder, rolling through the floorboards, like the whole house was warning them. "Danger, danger, danger." Her sister whispered, "Stay behind me," her voice low but fierce, because she was not afraid of him, not like the woman had been for years. He pushed open the bedroom door, his eyes darting between them, confusion flaring into anger. "What is going on here? Why are you here?" he demanded, looking straight at her sister, like she did not belong in his house, his world, his control. But her sister did not flinch. She stepped forward with this calm strength that made him blink. She said, "I am here because she needed me." And the way she said it cut through the room like a blade. He looked at his wife, and for the first time, she did not look away. She did not shrink. She did not apologize. And that shattered something inside him because control only works when the other person is afraid. And she was not afraid today. He tried to regain ground, raising his voice. "What lies did she tell you? She is overreacting. She always does this." Her sister stepped forward again, not breaking eye contact, and said quietly and with absolute certainty, "I heard enough." And that is when something happened that shook him more than any words could. She stepped out from behind her sister and stood on her own 2 feet, shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes steady. She said, "I am leaving." And the silence that followed was heavy enough to break the air, because he was not ready for that. Not from her, not after years of breaking her down piece by piece, expecting her to never rise again. He stepped toward her, face twisted in disbelief, anger, panic, but her sister blocked him like a wall. "You are not going near her." And he laughed, this bitter, dark laugh, like he thought it was all a joke, like he still believed she was the weak woman he had twisted into silence. But when she picked up her bag, when she walked past him without hesitation, something inside him snapped. He grabbed her arm, not hard, but tight enough to remind her of the woman she used to be, the one who froze, the one who obeyed. But she did not freeze this time. She pulled her arm back with a strength she did not know she had. She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You do not get to touch me anymore." And that broke him, because losing control of her meant losing the world he built around keeping her small. He tried a new tactic, switching from anger to sad, fragile begging. "Please do not do this. I can change. I will change, I promise." And she felt those words hit her the same way they always had, but this time they slipped right off because she finally understood something huge. He only promised to change when he was losing her, never when he was hurting her. She walked down the hallway, her sister right behind her, and every step she took felt like shedding a layer of fear, a layer of pain, a layer of the woman she used to be. She reached the front door, paused for 1 second not to reconsider, but to recognize that she was walking away from the life she thought she deserved and into the one she actually did deserve. And when she stepped outside, the sunlight hit her face, and for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost. Hope. You ever feel the air change around you like it knows something is coming, something big, something you cannot stop? And you can feel it crawling under your skin, tightening your chest, making every heartbeat louder than the last. That is exactly the tension she felt as she stepped out into the sunlight, the first real sunlight she had felt in years, and for a moment she could just breathe. But that moment did not last, because freedom has a price, and he was about to remind her of it. The second she closed the door behind her, she heard the slam behind her like the walls of her old life crashing down one last time, and she froze. Her sister grabbed her hand, pulling her forward. "We have to move fast." And she nodded because instinct had taken over. Fear had taken over, but not the kind of fear that paralyzes, the kind that sharpens your senses and makes you alive, makes you ready, makes you unstoppable. He came running down the stairs, shouting her name, the sound echoing through the hallways, through the streets, through her chest. He grabbed the front railing, slamming his hand against it, trying to regain composure, trying to pull the world back into his control. But she did not look back. She ran toward the car, her sister close behind, bags in hand, determination radiating off both of them like fire. She fumbled with the car keys, heart pounding, sweat on her palms, trying to breathe, trying to think. And then she heard it, the sound that made her freeze for a split second, the sound of his footsteps getting closer, louder, faster, angrier. She turned her head slightly and saw him at the end of the driveway, face twisted with disbelief and rage, and in that instant, she realized he would not just let this go. Not today, not ever. He had to have control. He had to pull her back. He had to destroy the moment of clarity she finally found. Her sister pushed her forward, faster, the keys sliding into the ignition. She jumped in, started the engine, and they were off, tires screeching across the pavement. But he did not stop. He ran to the car, shouting threats, wild, incoherent words, every step fueled by years of rage, years of frustration, years of being exposed by the very woman he thought he could control forever. She pressed the accelerator harder, heart pounding, every second a battle between fear and courage, every second a reminder that control was just an illusion. She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him slowing down, only because he could not keep up with the car, not because he gave up, not because he accepted defeat. And for the first time she realized how much power he had once had over her, how small he had made her feel, how trapped she had been inside his world. And she felt a strange mixture of relief and anger and triumph all at once. Her sister reached over, holding her hand steady, driving down the highway towards safety. They did not speak much, the silence thick, heavy, but comforting because it was full of understanding, full of shared strength, full of unspoken promises that they would not let him touch this moment of liberation ever again. She exhaled, finally allowing herself to feel the enormity of what had happened, the courage it took, the steps she had taken, the life she was finally claiming. But the moment of relief was short, because freedom always tests you. The moment they reached the first gas station to refuel, her phone buzzed with a message he had sent. A simple sentence, but filled with venom. "I am not done. You cannot escape me." And she felt the old panic rise for a split second. Old reflexes, old fears ready to drag her down. But then she looked at her sister. And she realized something huge. She realized she was not alone. She realized for the first time in years, she had an ally, a protector, a witness to her strength. And that gave her courage. They parked the car in a quiet corner, far from prying eyes, and she sat still, breathing in and out, trying to calm the adrenaline rushing through her veins, the fear still lingering at the edge of her mind. But her resolve steady, her clarity unshakable, she whispered to herself, "I am not crazy. I am not weak. I am not broken." And the words felt true. The words felt like armor. The words felt like the first real shield she had ever worn in her life. Then she made a plan, not detailed yet, but enough to keep them moving, enough to keep him from finding them, enough to keep her safe for the night. She would call friends. She would reach out for help. She would find a place she could breathe without fear. She would not go back. She would not look back. She would not apologize for wanting peace, for wanting safety, for wanting herself. Meanwhile, he sat in his car at the end of the driveway, furious, confused, angry, but powerless. And that is when the reality hit him. For the first time in years, control was an illusion. His anger was meaningless, her courage unstoppable, and that thought alone filled him with a mix of rage and disbelief, because for years he had ruled the narrative. Now, the narrative was gone, and there was nothing he could do about it. She drove through the night, city lights flashing past, each mile she put between herself and the past. Each mile a reminder that she was reclaiming her life. Every mile a declaration of independence. Every mile a promise to herself that she would never shrink again, never apologize for her existence again, never allow someone to define her worth again. She felt the exhaustion in her body and the weight of the past, and yet she also felt the rise of something new, something bright, something unstoppable. She knew that this was just the beginning of her journey and that there would be many more challenges ahead. But for the first time in her life, she felt free. She felt strong. She felt alive. Her sister reached over, holding her hand steady, driving down the highway towards safety. They did not speak much. The silence, thick, heavy, but comforting because it was full of understanding, full of shared strength, full of unspoken promises that they would not let him touch this moment of liberation ever again. She exhaled, finally allowing herself to feel the enormity of what had happened, the courage it took, the steps she had taken, the life she was finally claiming. But the moment of relief was short because freedom always tests you. The moment they reached the first gas station to refuel, her phone buzzed with a message he had sent. A simple sentence, but filled with venom. "I am not done. You cannot escape me." And she felt the old panic rise for a split second. Old reflexes, old fears ready to drag her down. But then she looked at her sister, and she realized something huge. She realized she was not alone. She realized for the first time in years, she had an ally, a protector, a witness to her strength. And that gave her courage. They parked the car in a quiet corner, far from prying eyes. And she sat still, breathing in and out, trying to calm the adrenaline rushing through her veins. The fear still lingering at the edge of her mind, but her resolve steady, her clarity unshakable. She whispered to herself, "I am not crazy. I am not weak. I am not broken." And the words felt true. The words felt like armor. The words felt like the first real shield she had ever worn in her life. Then she made a plan, not detailed yet, but enough to keep them moving, enough to keep him from finding them, enough to keep her safe for the night. She would call friends. She would reach out for help. She would find a place she could breathe without fear. She would not go back. She would not look back. She would not apologize for wanting peace, for wanting safety, for wanting herself. Meanwhile, he sat in his car at the end of the driveway, furious, confused, angry, but powerless. And that is when the reality hit him for the first time in years. Control was an illusion. His anger was meaningless. Her courage unstoppable. And that thought alone filled him with a mix of rage and disbelief. Because for years he had ruled the narrative. Now the narrative was gone, and there was nothing he could do about it. Then the phone buzzed again, and she froze, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than she realized. It was his voice, his text, his presence intruding even here. "I told you you would regret this." The words were sharp like knives, and she felt that old, familiar fear spike through her chest, the fear she had carried for years, the fear that had kept her small and quiet. And yet she took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and whispered to herself, "Not this time, not anymore." She would not let those words break her. She would not let him win. Her sister put a hand on hers, squeezing it softly, and said firmly, "Ignore it. He does not have power here anymore." And that small gesture, That quiet support reminded her that she was not alone and never would be again. That realization filled her with a rush of emotion, relief, anger, determination, grief all tangled together in a way that left her almost trembling with power. She whispered, "Yes, I am done." And for the first time in years, it felt true. Hours passed. They reached a safe location, a friend's house carefully chosen for distance, anonymity, and she felt a strange mix of comfort and nervous energy. The door closed behind her, and she finally let herself sink into a chair, feeling the weight of the past few hours crash down on her like a wave. She could finally exhale. She could finally cry. She could finally grieve the years of silence, of fear, of manipulation, of emotional abuse. She let it pour out, the tears, the shaking, the sobs, because she knew this was part of her reclaiming herself. Her sister sat beside her quietly, letting her process, letting her feel, letting her be human. And she whispered through tears, "I am not the same person anymore. I can see everything clearly now." And that clarity felt like a fire inside her chest, warming her soul for the first time in years, reminding her of who she was before the control, before the fear, before the manipulation, before the life that was never really hers. And then came the call she had been dreading and expecting in the pit of her stomach. His voice on the line, angry, desperate, demanding control. "You think you can just leave? You think you can walk away after everything I have done for you, after everything I have given you, after everything you promised me?" She felt the old reflexes rise. Panic, anxiety, guilt. But she held on to the truth she had discovered, held on to the new power that had been growing inside her for months. And she said calmly, clearly, "I am done. I cannot live like this anymore." He shouted louder, tried to twist the words, tried to manipulate the emotions, tried to make her feel guilty, tried to pull her back into his world of control. But she did not break. She did not cry. She did not apologize. She just spoke the truth firmly and without hesitation. "I am done. I am choosing myself." And her words hit him like a slap, because for years he had relied on her silence, her fear, her compliance, and now she was finally claiming her voice, her life, her freedom. She hung up the phone, shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline and power of finally doing something she had been too scared to do for years. And her sister hugged her tightly and whispered, "I am so proud of you." And those words filled her with a deep sense of validation. The kind she had never allowed herself to feel. The kind that reminded her that yes, she was worthy. Yes, she was strong. Yes, she could survive. Yes, she could be free. That night, she barely slept, thinking through plans, thinking through safety, thinking through what steps she needed to take next. She wrote down contacts, lawyers, shelters, friends, anyone who could help her navigate this new life. And as she made each note, she felt herself solidifying her resolve, each line a brick in the foundation of the new future she was building for herself, a future where fear would no longer dominate her life, a future where she could breathe freely, a future where she could finally be her own person. Morning came with a strange softness, the light pouring in through the window, not threatening, not controlling, not heavy. Just light. And she stood there, looking out at it, realizing that this was the first morning in a long time she could truly call her own, that she could choose how she wanted to feel, how she wanted to live, how she wanted to move forward. She whispered quietly to herself, "I am free." And this time, it was not just a statement, it was a promise, a vow to herself that she would never let anyone take this from her again. And somewhere far away, she knew he was trying to process losing control, trying to process losing her compliance, trying to process the truth that she was no longer the person he could manipulate. And that realization would haunt him because he had built his life on the assumption of power, and now he had none, and she had everything. She had clarity, courage, safety, and a sister standing beside her. And that was the moment she realized that leaving was not just escape, It was reclaiming. It was healing. It was life. And nothing could take that away. The next few days felt like a strange mix of calm and storm for her. She moved carefully through each moment, checking messages, organizing contacts, making calls, figuring out the first steps toward permanent safety. Every call to a lawyer or support group felt like a small rebellion against the years she had spent hiding. Every note she wrote, every question she asked, every plan she made was a brick in the foundation of the new life she was finally claiming. And with each one, she felt a little lighter, a little braver, a little closer to the woman she had buried under fear. Her sister stayed close, never leaving her side, not out of pity, but out of protection and solidarity, and that presence itself felt revolutionary after years of being alone in the chaos of emotional abuse. She realized how much she had depended on silence, on isolation, on the constant fear that he would manipulate her into compliance. And now that chain was broken. She could think, she could plan, she could speak, she could breathe freely for the first time in decades. But freedom comes with its own tension, because he was not gone, he was not defeated, he was just restrained by distance and time. And that tension made her pulse quicken. Every phone buzz, every text, every unfamiliar car on the street made her heart jump, because she knew he was trying to find her, even though she had already built layers of protection and safety. And for the first time, she realized just how calculated his control had been and how carefully she needed to navigate each step to maintain her power. She made her first formal call to a lawyer, explaining everything succinctly, clearly, but with trembling undercurrents of the emotion she had held back for so long. The lawyer listened and confirmed what she had suspected for years. Emotional abuse was real. It was recognized, and she had rights, protections, and now she could pursue steps that would legally prevent him from continuing to terrorize her. That knowledge alone lit a fire in her chest, because finally she could fight in a way that was visible and tangible and binding. He froze for a second, because she did not break. She did not cry. She did not run. She stood her ground. And for the first time, he realized he could not bend her to his will anymore. He shouted threats, words meant to wound, but she ignored them. Her sister and friends flanked her, ensuring her safety, and in that moment, she realized the power of truth and community. Together, the power of finally claiming her life and voice. She was no longer alone. She was no longer small. She was no longer trapped. The confrontation escalated for a tense few minutes, but she remained composed, keeping control of her breathing, focusing on the reality of her freedom, focusing on the steps she had already taken, and when he finally left, powerless, angry, and defeated, she let herself exhale fully for the first time in years. The storm passed, but the victory was hers, because she had faced him and stood unbroken. And the emotional shift inside her solidified. She was no longer the scared, compliant woman from before. Her journey had entered a new phase. The fight for legal protections, the fight for emotional recovery, the fight for permanent independence, and each small victory, each call made, each affirmation spoken, each step taken away from fear, strengthened her. She was learning that reclaiming life after abuse is not a single moment, but a series of conscious choices repeated over and over, and that is exactly what she began doing. The days that followed were quieter, but charged with purpose. She moved through them with a clarity she had never known before. Each call, each appointment, each small step a declaration of independence. She learned to breathe fully again, to speak freely again, to trust slowly again. And with every passing moment, the weight of the past lifted a little more. He tried to contact her again, legal threats, emotional manipulation, but she stayed firm each time, responding calmly through her lawyer or ignoring him entirely, knowing that his power over her had ended. She finally understood that freedom was not just physical, it was emotional, mental, spiritual, and nothing he could do would take that from her. One morning, she stood by the window, looking out at the sunlight, feeling it on her face, and realized she had arrived. She had crossed the threshold from fear to courage, from silence to voice, from victim to survivor. The years of manipulation, the anger, the guilt, the fear, they were no longer chains. They were lessons and proof of the woman she had become. Her sister hugged her and whispered, "You did it." And she smiled quietly. "I did," she whispered back, and meant it more than anything she had ever said before. "I am me now, completely, fully, and no one can take that from me ever again." She felt peace for the first time in decades. Peace, not because the past was gone, but because she finally owned her present and her future. The story ended not with shouting or revenge, but with calm resolve and hard-earned freedom. The emotional storm had passed, the control had broken, the fear had lifted, and in its place stood a woman fully awake, fully aware, and fully alive, ready to embrace a life built on her own terms. And here she stands, finally free, breathing in the sunlight, feeling every ounce of courage she ever thought she lost, and realizing she owns her life, her choices, her voice, and her happiness. And that strength that she discovered inside herself is something no one can ever take away from her again. She smiles softly, knowing the journey was painful, but every step was worth it. If you are watching this right now and you feel trapped or afraid, remember, you are not alone. You have a voice and a life worth claiming, just like her. And every step you take toward your freedom is a victory in itself. Before we wrap up, make sure you hit that like button if you felt inspired or empowered by the story. It really helps support the channel and motivates us to bring you more real and powerful stories. And if you want to follow along on this journey of courage and hear more stories like this, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Because every story here is about strength, survival, and taking control of your life. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay brave, and always remember, your story matters. Your freedom matters, and your happiness matters. Now go out there and claim it. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.